Hello and welcome back to James Talks Property. If you're new here, my name's James and I'm on a mission to help as many investors as possible grow their knowledge and understanding of the property investment market without gimmicks or unrealistic promises. I've helped thousands of investors grow their knowledge and understanding of the property investment market, as well as purchase over £10 million worth of property in the last 12 months. Today's video is all about HMOs. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe and share this to anyone that might also be interested. If you don't know what a HMO is a house of multiple occupancy. It's essentially a property that is converted in line with regulation to rent out on a room-by-room basis rather than an individual or a family as a whole. It's essentially rented out to 3 or more unrelated tenants who share facilities like the kitchen. One of the big reasons people buy and hold long-term HMOs is the opportunity for a higher cash flow than things like a buy-to-let. This is because you're renting it out on a room-by-room basis. You'll get the opportunity to earn more as a rental income because of that. For example, rather than renting out a 5-bed house to a family for £2,000 a month, you might be able to rent that out to individuals or 5 different individuals for £500 or £700 per month per tenant. So, are HMOs worth it? And what do you need to be aware of before you buy a HMO? Before you buy a HMO, you need to understand the differences between different types of HMOs and what that looks like. The reason for this is there's different legislation and licensing required for different areas within the country based on the council involved. So first and foremost, the different types of HMOs. You've got mini HMOs, which are usually 3 or 4 tenants. You've got licensable HMOs, which are usually 5+ tenants. And then you've got professional HMOs, which are usually targeted towards professionals, which are done to a higher level or higher standard for people living in them. These professional HMOs often achieve a higher income because they're done to a better standard, but it's ultimately up to you which way you go with your HMO and what that looks like for you and the local market. The big thing with HMOs is you need to decide if you're going to buy a ready-made HMO or you want to convert a house or a home into an HMO moving forward. The reason for this is because there's licenses and legislation involved, you need to make sure you're compliant as the owner of the property. The reason for this is if you're converting a property into an HMO is you need to know if the council have Article 4 in place. If they don't, this means you can convert a property into an HMO which holds up to 5 people without the need for planning permission. This is called a permitted development, where if a council have implemented Article 4 into the local area, then this removes those automatic rights and you would need planning permission, even if it's just for 3 or 4 people. This is why you need to know the area in which you're buying this property, especially if you're converting it, because if the council doesn't give you planning permission, you could then be stuck with a property. I know a guy in my network who only does HMOs for himself, and he actually actively avoids these locations because of the headaches that the Article 4 can bring when trying to convert a property into a HMO. If you're buying a property that's already been converted into an HMO, just make sure that you're aware of what that means and what the legislation and the licensing looks like for you and that specific property before you go through the purchase. So now we got the boring stuff out of the way. What makes a good HMO? First thing you should do when looking at buying an HMO is looking at the location. Obviously, the first thing for that is Article 4 that we already touched upon, but also you need to make sure there's a demand for this type of property in the area in which you're purchasing. Well, what do these tenants look like? We're looking at students, young professionals, hospital staff, or any professionals where they may need a room for a specific amount of time. You also need to make sure that the layout is good. There needs to be enough space to comfortably create the bedrooms and communal space without squeezing the tenants in. You then need to make sure that the HMO is compliant. It needs to meet safety regulations, planning permission, and the licensing rules. And the final thing you need to make sure that the HMO is good quality is management. The management of an HMO is obviously more intensive than a normal standard buy-to-let property because there's more tenants, there's higher turnover, you need to do more cleaning, and there's more things that could go wrong within the property. That means if you're not self-managing, you need to make sure you're appointing a management company that knows what they're doing, has done it before, has a good reputation, and will treat the tenants well. And if you are self-managing, you need to make sure you have the systems in place to make sure that people aren't waiting around for you and getting frustrated with the service. So we know what a good HMO looks like. We know that we need to follow the regulation, but what mistakes do people often make when they're purchasing or owning HMOs? The first mistake a lot of investors make when buying HMOs is forgetting about void periods and maintenance costs. Obviously, because you're renting the property out on a room-by-room basis, you're going to have a higher turnover of tenant and you're going to have higher maintenance costs because of the way the property is set up. This means that when selling agents are selling HMOs, they often market the property as a 12, 15 or even an 18% yield. But after you look at the net yield, once you've actually calculated void periods, management and maintenance, your yield is likely to be significantly lower, and it might be down to 7, 8%. This might mean for you it's not as attractive because although your yield is a little bit better than it might be on a standard buy-to-let, there's loads more things that you need to manage, you need to be aware of, and you might not even get the capital appreciation on the asset as you would on a standard buy-to-let because demand is significantly lower for HMO type properties rather than normal residential homes. So it comes back down to your goals. Are you buying this property for a cash flow perspective as part of a diversified portfolio, or are you buying this to grow your wealth? Because if it's to grow your wealth, the chances are this probably isn't the right strategy for you. The second mistake people often make is overestimating the tenant demand. Just because you build or buy an HMO doesn't mean that tenants will necessarily rent the property. You need to make sure that you've handpicked the location, you're providing a service to these tenants, and you're not just converting a house to an HMO just because you think it will earn you a bit more money. The next is assuming that all councils are the same. Oh, I have a HMO in this location, this one will be fine. Every council works differently, so before you buy anything, make sure you've done your due diligence, you understand the legislation and the rules for that particular council, and you follow that moving forward. The fourth mistake people often make when buying or owning HMOs is poor tenant management. Obviously, you're going to have a higher turnover of tenant because of the way the property is set up and because these properties are often not there for people to live in for 5, 10 years like they would be a normal buy-to-let. People might only be there for 3 or 6 months at a time. It might be to do with training contracts or anything from that perspective. So you need to make sure you have everything set up in the right way so you can find tenants quickly, you can deal with the cleaning, and you don't have long void periods. The fifth mistake people often make is underestimating the compliance and setup costs of an HMO if it's not already set up and ready to go. You've got to pay for things like fire doors, alarms, licensing, and this can start to stack up once you look at all the costs of everything. And the final thing, and something that is really, really important, is the financing of an HMO. HMO mortgages are specialist products, so they're going to have higher charges and higher fees associated with them. And often what you'll see is you're buying properties that will be converted into HMOs. You'll often need to buy in cash. They'll then be converted and you'll look to get a mortgage out the back end. But that mortgage isn't straightforward. You need a commercial valuation most of the time, and there's no guarantee that that will happen, or a surveyor will go out and value it on a commercial basis. So if that's the case and you've never done it before, the risk is very high, so you need to be aware of what you're doing and what that looks like for you and this property specifically. Essentially, don't just take someone's word for it that you can get a mortgage on a property that is not yet set up on an HMO. You need to be comfortable with the fact that a lot of your cash might be sitting in that property, and if you can release that equity out the back end, then you're onto a winner. So, to conclude, HMOs are great as part of a diversified portfolio. They're higher risk, like things like buy-to-let properties, but if you can set them up in the right way, in the right location, you'll give yourself the opportunity to earn a slightly higher income and will be great as part of an overall portfolio which is growing in value. I wouldn't personally only look at HMOs. My personal experience with HMOs has been a little bit mixed. To be honest, it's not something where we've made lots of money in the past, but I know people that are doing it really well, and some people do make a lot of cash from the conversions. But like anything, do your due diligence first, understand your risk, know your risk tolerance, and understand whether this strategy works for you and your goals. If not, then that's fine. You don't need to do this. But if it works for you, then go ahead, give it a go, and see how you get on. And that is that for today's video. So thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.